Grade 7, this is a math video for lesson 5-4, finding percents mentally. Please look at page 220 and 221 right now as I discuss some of what you see there. The first thing I'd like you to look at on page 220 is about halfway down the page, a line that shows percents on the top and then fraction numbers on the bottom. Notice that the number 0 is equal to 0%, and the number 1 on the bottom is equal to 100% above it. Notice, look for the fraction 1/2, which is in the middle bottom. 1/2 is equal to 50% up on top. 1/4 on the bottom is equal to 25%, and 3/4 is equal to 75%. Those are very helpful fractions and percent values that one should hopefully memorize pretty quickly. Also, that purple table at the bottom, either memorize it or know where it is so that you can find it quickly, because it's going to be helpful in this assignment. Now, as far as how do we do these problems, let's take a look at a boatload of example problems here. If I were to do this one right here, what is 25% of 52? I would look at that purple chart and I would find out that 25% is 1/4. So I'm really talking about 1/4 times 52 over 1. Now, we are trying to find these mentally, these answers here. So I would just simply take 52 over 4, and I know that 4 divided into 52 goes 13 times if I do the long division. This one right here, 12.5% of 160. Look at the purple table, find 12.5%. You'll notice that it's the number 1/8. So I'm going to take 1/8 times 160. That's 20 over 1, or just plain 20. Look at 80%. 80% on your chart there is the fraction 4/5. So if I want to figure out 4/5 of 45, well, hey, I'm going to cross simplify. Divide by 5, divide by 5, gives me an answer of 36 there. How about 10% of 65? Well, 10% according to, wait a minute, yep, 10% is 1/10. 1/10 times 65 over 1, that would be 65 over 10, which simplifies down to 6.5 if I do the long division. How about 1%? That's not on the table, is it? But there's something about 10% and 1%. Realize I could just simply write 1% as 1/100, because percent means hundredths. And I can multiply it by 450 over 1, and I get 450 over 100, which simplifies down to 4.5. But another way to do that is there's a trick you can realize. Multiplying by 1% is the same thing as moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. The decimal point was right here. Move it 2 places to the left, 1, 2, you get that answer of 4.5. Multiplying by 10% is like moving the decimal point 1 place to the left, and that's why this one is 6.5. How about this one right here? Well, 30%, is that on your chart? No. Yeah, it is. It's 3/10. So we basically have 3/10 times 22 over 1, which would be 66 over 10, which, if you do the division, is 6.6. 50%, that's the fraction of 1/2. So we got 1/2 times 120. That would be 60 over 1, or just plain 60 after I do some simplifying. Right? 33.33%. Well, if you look at your chart, your purple chart, that's the number 1/3. So we got 1/3 times 60, and that would end up being 20 when we do all the math involved. 37.5%. If you look at your chart, 37.5% is 3/8. So it's 3/8 times 72 over 1. Hey, I can divide by 8, and I get 27 as my final answer there. Let's go to this next row. We'll work up from the bottom. 40%, is that on your chart? Yes, it is. 40% is 2/5 times 35 over 1. Divide by 5, divide by 5. I get an answer of 14. Is that on the board? Sure looks like it. 16 2/3%, if you look at your chart, that's the fraction 1/6. 1/6 times 54 over 1. Divide by 6, divide by 6. I get an answer of 9. Whoops, that should say 12.5%. 12.5% of 64 on your chart, that's 1/8 times 64 over 1. If you do the math, you end up with an answer of 8, because 64 divided by 8 is 8. How about 50% of 62? That's 1/2 times 62. That would be 31 once we do all the math. 25%, that's 1/4 times 44 over 1, which ends up being 11, because 44 divided by 4 is 11. 90% of 100,000, that's really 9/10 times 100,000 over 1, and that would end up being 90,000 after we do the math work. 20%, according to your purple table, it's 1/5 times 630 over 1. This is a tougher one. I don't know if I can do this in my head. 5 goes into 6 one time. It goes into 13 2 times. It goes into 36 times. There it is, 126. 630 divided by 5 is 126. Do you remember my little trick for 10% of something? Remember I said for 10% of something, you move the decimal point over one spot. So our answer is 35. I know that. But if I do it by means of the method that the book is showing us, it would be 1/10, because 10% is 1/10, times 350, which would be 350 over 10, which would still simplify down to 35. Do you remember what I said about 1% of a number? Move the decimal point 2 places to the left. 2 places to the left. So automatically I know that this changes to 0.52. But if I do it by changing it to 1/100th, guess what? I would still get that same answer, because 52 over 100 is 0.52. Let's move over. How about 60% of 15? The book says that 60% is 3/5 times 15 over 1. Divide by 5, divide by 5. I get 1 and 3 for a final answer of 9. 66 2/3% of 120. Not much room here. How about 2/3 times 120? I can divide by 3, divide by 3. I get a final answer of 80. I don't know if you can even read that. Maybe that's too small. 62.5%, according to the purple table, is 5/8. So it's 5/8 times 160. Divide by 8, divide by 8. You get 1, you get 20. A final answer of 100. 10% of 57. Hey, can't we just move the decimal point over one spot? Yes, we can. Or we can take 1/10 times 57 over 1, and we'd still get that same answer of 5.7. 1% of 81. Hey, can't we just move the decimal point over 2 places like Mr. Panko says? Yes, we can. Or we can multiply 1/100th times 81 over 1, and we're going to get 81 over 100, which is that number. Same thing with this one. We're moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. So it'll be 0.283. Or we could take 1 over 100 times 28.3 over 1, and we would still get that same answer. How about 10% of 17? Hey, Mr. Panko said move the decimal point 1 spot over to the left. That would be 1.71. Or we can take 1/10 times 17.1 over 1, and that would still give us 17.1 over 10, which would simplify to 1.71 when we did the long division. 3% of 130? Well, why not 3 over 100 times 130 over 1? That would give us 390 over 100, which would give us 3 9/10 once I simplify it. Now, if you wanted the decimal version, that would be 3.9. And finally, our last problem, 7% of 210. How about 7 hundredths times 210 over 1? And we would get a really big number, 1,470 over 100, which simplifies down to, let's see, 14 7/10 is one way to say it. Or we could say it as 14.7 when we did the long division. Okay, this is 7th grade math for today. Thank you.